A young girl stepped out to visit a store just a few minutes from her home, an errand so ordinary it barely raised an eyebrow, but she never returned. Her sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through the quiet neighborhood. As the police launched their investigation, they peeled back layers of secrets, uncovering a chilling truth that no one could have anticipated. Christy Wesselman was born on April 19, 1970, in the charming town of Glen Ellen, Illinois. She grew up in a warm, close-knit family, sharing her home with her mom, two older brothers, and a sister. Known for its safety and tight community bonds, Glen Ellen was the town where kids could roam freely, and Christy embraced that freedom wholeheartedly. She loved the outdoors and spent countless hours exploring the neighborhood with her friends. At school, Christy's bright and outgoing personality made her a popular figure among her peers. She wasn't just well-liked, she was an achiever. Christy was actively involved in school activities, even earning the role of vice president of her class. In addition, she showcased her athletic side by playing volleyball and softball, becoming a beloved teammate and student. By the summer of 1985, 15-year-old Christy took summer classes while still finding time to hang out with her friends. On July 21st, a sunny and ordinary day, Christy returned home from school at around 3:30 p.m., not knowing that this day would soon be etched in the memories of those who knew her. Shortly after getting home, Christy took a quick trip to the local store to pick up a soda and a chocolate bar for herself and her mom. It was a simple errand, one her mother expected to take just a few minutes, as the store was only a short walk away. But as time ticked by, an unsettling feeling began to creep in. Christy wasn't coming home. At first, her mother thought Christy might have bumped into some friends and decided to spend time with them. It was the mid-'80s, before cell phones, so there was no way to check in with Christy. Her mom had no choice but to wait, though her unease grew as the sun dipped below the horizon. By evening, the worry had turned into fear. Desperate for answers, Christy's mother called her friends, hoping one of them had seen her. But the responses were all the same. None had crossed paths with Christy that day. Determined to find her daughter, she headed to the store, scanning the streets and sidewalks. But there was no sign of Christy. The family spent hours searching the neighborhood, growing more frantic every minute. When midnight came and went without any leads, Christy's mother made the heart-wrenching decision to contact the police. By 1:50 a.m., officers had joined the search, determined to uncover what had happened. Their investigation began by retracing Christy's last known movements. They spoke with the clerk at the store, a man who knew Christy well. He lived nearby and had even babysat her when she was younger. He confirmed seeing Christy at the store around 4 p.m. that day. She had come in just as planned, and then she disappeared. Christy grabbed a few chocolate bars and left the store. She didn't mention where she was headed, but the clerk, who had seen her many times before, noted that she seemed happy and showed no signs of distress or unusual behavior. The police found a few other witnesses who also recalled seeing Christy at the store but could not remember where she went after leaving. Investigators turned their attention to Christy's friends, exploring the possibility that she had lost track of time while hanging out with someone. However, none of her friends reported seeing her that day. With no immediate leads, the police focused all their resources on the search, scouring the streets late into the night. But the darkness made their efforts even more challenging. Despite their determination, there was no trace of Christy, no clues, signs, or answers. As dawn broke, the search continued with renewed urgency. By midday, a fresh team of officers took over the investigation. One officer suggested retracing Christy's likely route, theorizing that she might have taken the shortest path from her house to the store, a shortcut through a nearby field. This idea reignited hope, as it was a path few people would have noticed during the initial search. Determined to leave no stone unturned, the team pressed on, following this new lead to uncover what had happened to Christy. At the time, a vast vacant lot with tall grass stretched between the residential area and the store. While adults might opt to drive around it to save time, local kids frequently used a narrow, well-worn path cutting through the field. It was a shortcut to the nearby store or McDonald's, saving precious minutes for the young and eager. That path became the detectives' focus as they searched for any clues about Christy's disappearance. As one detective carefully followed the trail, something out of place caught his attention amid the dense grass. Pushing through the overgrowth, he made a chilling discovery: the lifeless body of Christie. He immediately called for backup, and her body was handed over to the medical examiner for further analysis. Forensic experts meticulously combed the scene, searching for any evidence that could explain what had happened. But there was nothing. No footprints, no personal belongings, no clear signs of a struggle. The only clues were the 8 stab wounds that had tragically ended Christie's life and the biological evidence left by the perpetrator. However, in 1985, DNA testing was still in its infancy and rarely used in criminal investigations. The collected samples were preserved for potential future analysis. Christie's mother provided another poignant detail to investigators. On the day she disappeared, Christie had been wearing a pearl ring on her finger, a cherished accessory. However, the ring was missing, neither found on her body nor at the crime scene. Detectives speculated that the killer might have taken it as a trophy. They issued instructions for all officers to monitor local pawn shops in case the ring was sold. Without physical evidence to guide them, the police turned their efforts to locating potential witnesses who might have seen Christie or the killer near the field. They identified several individuals who had used the same path around the estimated time of the crime, but none of them recalled seeing anything suspicious. The lack of witnesses was baffling, especially since Christie's body was only a few yards from the trail. High grass had concealed her, making discovery almost impossible. Investigators also learned that just a few dozen yards from where Christie's body was found, a family had been hosting a backyard barbecue that evening. Despite their proximity to the crime scene, no one at the gathering reported seeing or hearing anything unusual. Even a gas station employee working a full shift just 60 yards from the field failed to notice anything out of the ordinary that day. The stark contrast between the brutality of the crime and the seemingly undisturbed surroundings left investigators with more questions than answers as the mystery surrounding Christie's tragic death deepened. To the police, the situation was perplexing. Despite the crime scene being surrounded by people, a family hosting a barbecue, a gas station attendant nearby, no one had seen or heard anything unusual. Investigators theorized that the unidentified attacker may have followed Christie from the store to the field or intercepted her along the path. It's possible the assailant lured her just a few steps into the tall grass, where he killed her quickly and silently. Detectives considered the possibility that Christie may have known her killer. This could explain why there were no signs of a struggle or screams for help. After all, Glen Ellen was a small town where many residents were familiar with one another. Police began investigating all the men who knew Christie, hoping to find a connection, but their efforts led nowhere. They also compiled a list of local men with a history of violence, meticulously examining each one as a potential suspect. While a few seemed promising, none could be definitively linked to Christie's murder. Months stretched into years, and the investigation stalled. Detectives followed every lead and scrutinized new suspects, but every promising thread unraveled into a dead end. For 3 long years, the case remained unsolved. Then, in 1988, a groundbreaking opportunity emerged. DNA analysis was rapidly becoming a crucial tool in criminal investigations. With the preserved biological evidence from the crime scene, detectives decided to revisit the case with this new technology. They began collecting DNA samples from anyone who could have potentially been involved in Christie's murder. Many individuals willingly cooperated, providing samples to clear their names. Yet, with each new test, the results were the same. None of the DNA matched the evidence at the scene. Despite their best efforts, the case remained a haunting mystery, with the identity of Christie's killer still unknown. The breakthrough they hoped for continued to elude them. There was one man who refused to provide a DNA sample: Dana Henry, a 34-year-old who lived near the field where Christie's body was discovered. From the early days of the investigation, Henry had been on the police's radar. At the time, he denied any involvement in the crime, but now his refusal to cooperate raised serious doubts about his innocence. Determined to move forward, investigators sought a court order to obtain Henry's DNA. He appeared in court, continuing to assert his innocence, but his defiance led to him being charged with contempt of court. Henry was detained in a local jail for several days, and only after immense pressure did he reluctantly agree to provide a sample. When the results came back, the DNA evidence cleared him. His sample did not match that of Christie's killer. Henry was released, but his ordeal was far from over. Speaking to reporters after his release, he recounted how he had been held in a cell without clothes and only freed after succumbing to overwhelming pressure to comply. The experience left him humiliated and financially devastated. Henry revealed that he had spent nearly $50,000 on legal fees, a staggering sum. He was forced to mortgage his home to cover the costs, which he ultimately lost. The fallout extended to his personal life. Friends and family distanced themselves from him, unable or unwilling to reconcile with his tarnished reputation. Angry and disillusioned, Henry filed a lawsuit against the police department, but the case seemed to go nowhere. Even with DNA evidence proving his innocence, suspicion lingered. Many in the community still believed he was guilty, and the shadow of the accusation continued to follow him. Years later, Henry admitted to reporters that the entire ordeal had destroyed his life. Though he was never officially charged with any crime, the stigma was impossible to escape. Meanwhile, the investigation into Christie's murder remained at a standstill, with no new leads or suspects. Her case sat unresolved for another year, a painful reminder of justice delayed. 1989, a surprising twist brought the Christie case back into the spotlight. A judge issued a restraining order against Willis, a local man, after he repeatedly provided information to the victim's family about the identity of who he believed was Christie's killer. Willis first contacted the Christie family in late 1985, claiming to have vital information. Over nearly 4 years, he sent the family a series of leads and statements. However, each time the police checked, all those leads were either inaccurate or completely unrelated to the case. Finally, the Christie family could take it no longer. They filed a complaint, which led to the judge issuing a restraining order against Willis from contacting them. Following the restraining order, the police turned their attention to Willis, investigating whether he had any connection to the case. Still, no evidence linked Willis to the crime. The case remained unsolved. In 2000, the DNA of Christie's killer was uploaded to the FBI database in hopes of finding a match. But again, to no avail. For years, the case remained unsolved. Over time, the original detectives retired or moved on, and Christie's case was handed off to a new team. Then, in 2015, something completely unexpected happened. One day, the investigation team received a notification from the FBI's DNA database. A DNA sample from Christie's killer was a perfect match to a profile that had just been uploaded. The suspect was Michael Jones, 62, who lived in a small town called Champaign, about 150 miles from where the crime occurred. This was the moment detectives had been waiting for 3 decades, a final ray of hope in a mystery that once seemed unsolvable. Michael Jones's DNA was added to the database after he was arrested for domestic violence. His wife reported him to the police, leading to his arrest. Under an Illinois law passed in 2002, anyone suspected of a crime is required to provide a DNA sample. Interestingly, the main pusher for the law was a district attorney from the same area where Christie's murder occurred. The unsolved case became a significant factor in his advocacy for the law. Once the DNA test results matched the sample from the crime scene, investigators immediately went looking for Michael Jones. What's remarkable is that Jones' name had never appeared in the case file. He was not a suspect, witness, or connected to the previous investigation. Detectives were completely unaware of his existence. As they dug deeper, they discovered that Michael Jones had a lengthy criminal history. His first brush with the law came in the mid-1970s when he attacked a woman. But for reasons unknown, he avoided any serious consequences. Just a year later, Jones struck a 27-year-old woman and left her in a hospital parking lot. When police issued an arrest warrant, Jones turned himself in. At trial, Jones expressed remorse and insisted he respected the law, citing serious mental health issues that required professional help. However, an independent psychiatrist determined he was fully aware of his actions. As a result, Jones was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. But as you might expect, he was released early for good behavior, serving just 6 years and getting out in 1983, just 2 years before Christie's murder. What was even more shocking was that his victim in the attack was not informed of his early release. She later said that she would have fought the decision if she had known. A year after his release, Jones married. However, in 1994, his first wife left him and filed for a restraining order. She claimed that Jones had shown an unhealthy interest in her young relative. Despite Michael Jones's disturbing behavior, which repeatedly caused a stir, he avoided formal charges until 1999, when he was arrested for assaulting a family member of his new girlfriend. Detectives later discovered that Jones frequently took long trips alone on his motorcycle, often visiting relatives in Chicago. Interestingly, Christie's town was right on his route, raising the possibility that he had passed through the area while visiting family. If so, it would explain why Michael's name had never appeared in the case file. If he had only been passing through for a few hours, tracking his movements would have been nearly impossible. Christie's mother even admitted that she had never heard of him before. When the police first called to ask about Michael, she thought it was just another routine investigation, like so many over the past 30 years. But this was different. Everything changed when police obtained a new DNA sample from Michael while he was in prison. The results confirmed that his DNA matched the sample collected from Christie's crime scene, finally exposing the truth. Michael Jones was Christie's killer. The police informed Christie's mother of this vital news. After decades of pain and waiting, the man responsible for her daughter's death was finally arrested. It was a moment of both heartache and relief, bringing closure to a 30-year-long pain. Before formally charging Michael with the murder, detectives spoke to his ex-girlfriend to learn more. She described Michael as having a volatile temperament, quickly shifting from calm to rage without apparent reason. She also revealed that he was obsessed with detective books and crime shows on TV, leading detectives to suspect that Michael might not only be responsible for Christie's murder, but might also be involved in other unsolved crimes. His mysterious solo trips, combined with his unstable psychological profile, led investigators to believe that Christie might just be one of his victims. The question now was why Michael did it, and whether he might have left behind any other horrifying traces along his journey. Michael Jones's criminal tendencies and obsession with crime stories suggest that he may have been good at covering his tracks and avoiding leaving evidence behind. After investigators built a solid case, Michael was formally charged on September 18, 2015. However, he continued to deny any involvement in Christie's murder. The case dragged on for 3 years, with the trial not beginning until 2018. Prosecutors sought a life sentence, but Michael ultimately opted to plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. The deal did not require him to reveal the details of his crimes, but with the incontrovertible DNA evidence, there was no doubt about his guilt. Michael was sentenced to 80 years in prison, with the possibility of parole no sooner than 2095. In other words, he will almost certainly never be free. Christie's family thanked investigators for finally bringing closure to the case. However, Christie's mother expressed disappointment that Michael was released early in 1983. She stressed that if he had served his complete 10-year sentence, he would not have had the opportunity to kill her daughter. If justice had been served in time, Christie would still be here today, she said. Elsewhere, Henry, the wrongly accused man, also attended Michael's trial. In a later interview, Henry shared that the false accusations had destroyed his life. Even after decades, he has not fully recovered. "I hoped that justice would have healed me, but it hasn't," Henry said, his voice somber. He also revealed that over the years, no one from the police department had ever apologized to him, much less held him accountable for his losses. This story is a painful reminder of the flaws in the justice system, the consequences of not serving a proper sentence, and the perseverance of those seeking justice. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to continue supporting me. Thanks for watching.